The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5-College Credit Union, dedicated to creating access to financial well-being for local people, businesses, and communities. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, Art Lives, through a series of grants given out by CitySpace in Easthampton. This year's cohort of Pay It Forward grant recipients has just been announced, and 10 local artists will get...
8, actually. My bad.
And 8 local artists will get to perform in the organization's Blue Room. We'll chat with Zoë Fieldman about the folks who they're working with to help show off their talents this year.
We'll also get to speak with the first of those recipients who'll take the stage on August 30th with their jazz quartet, Chestina Thrower.
But first, a look at the Bay State's history.
And Sheffield in particular, where the seeds of freedom were planted in a court case in the late 18th century.
It's time for a very special Power of History with Clark University Professor of History, Dr. Ousmane Power-Greene from Northampton.
Righty.
And we are in Northampton in the village of Florence.
Yes.
Where we are at the David Ruggles Center, where we're surrounded by history on the walls here and the potential for continuing to tell the stories of the abolitionist history of this neighborhood.
Yep.
And for you to help support telling that history are coming up in the future. Full disclosure, right after this interview, I'm going to Clark University where you work because my son is moving in. It's move-in day. He's going to be a freshman there and the film program. So I've got my Clark University dad shirt on.
That is awesome.
If you see anybody messing with a tall blonde kid named Enzo, Ousmane, step in, okay?
I will absolutely step in and I'll help them understand the broad and deep lineage of communication that Enzo's a part of. So, Enzo, looking forward to seeing you in my classes, by the way.
Okay, good.
If you listen to your dad's show, which, if it's like my kids, then probably not.
What classes are you teaching this semester, though?
So this semester, really excited. I'm teaching my Black Cultural History class called Freedom Dreams. And we look at the influences of art and music and poetry and plays on American popular culture. And also, I should say that it's kind of a foundation class for my hip-hop class. So those of you out there who decide to go to Clark and you ever want to take my hip-hop class, the Freedom Dreams class provides a foundation for understanding the importance of the influence of African-American cultural forms on American popular culture. So.
All right, well, I'm going to sign him up for that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Without his permission.
And then you can vicariously take the hip-hop class through your son.
Yeah, send me all the notes and the books.
Awesome.
But that is not what we're here at the Ruggles Center to talk about today. We're not even here to talk about the abolitionist David Ruggles. Who are we here to talk about, Professor Ousmane Power-Greene?
So
the reason that David Ruggles got to keep his house.
Exactly.
That's true, yeah.
Exactly. Well, we in the 413 are very proud that we have a many global icons, and I put Elizabeth Freeman as one by nature of the influence of African-American history all around the world, actually. Elizabeth Freeman was one of the early people that sued for her freedom in Massachusetts, in Sheffield, and we're really excited to be a part of a celebration of her life that really, I think, picked up in earnest with the Elizabeth Mumbet Freeman statue, which was put in maybe a few years ago.
And I love this movement of statues, and we're near one of the earliest ones in our part of the world here, where there was a Sojourner Truth statue put right down the street from the Ruggles Center to honor her work and her legacy and her time here in Florence. We were just at the unveiling a month or so ago in Great Barrington of the W.E.B. Du Bois statue in front of the library there, which is amazing. They're hoping to continue to make a galvanizing force to learn about these important figures in Black history in the 413, and Elizabeth Mumbet Freeman is another one of these, and she has been honored with a statue as a couple years ago.
Yeah, and what I think is so exciting about these moments is that what they do is they focus people's attention around, founding values that unfortunately have been challenged by some people. And those values, the whole idea of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all that stuff, which is a major part of the 250-year celebrations that are going to happen over the next year, everybody. Like, stay tuned. We're going to see which versions are the ones that really reinvigorate us, as opposed to versions of our past that are part of myths that just really most historians mostly disagree with. But being sure to acknowledge the role of people like Elizabeth Freeman orient us towards what I think are the most important values of the nation.
So let's talk about who Elizabeth Mumbet Freeman is to begin with, because we have mentioned her before. There is a farm named in her honor in Sheffield.
We went to the farm.
We did go to the farm. It's awesome there.
They still do a lot of great activism and work day in and day out, year in and year out, yeah.
There is a statue.
I was just looking at the image of the very, very prominent painting of Elizabeth Freeman that was done, in 1811.
I think in no small part proving that it's not just the Kodak colors that had us wrong, but the paints also had us wrong. They did not quite know how to capture her skin, I feel like.
It's not the most flattering painting.
It is not, but it is a record at least that we have of what she...
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more of her story.
Yeah, so, Elizabeth Freeman, was enslaved in Sheffield, Mass. And one of the most exciting sort of elements of her life as an enslaved person is she found herself surrounded by, the sort of men of property and standing, in this case, white men of property and standing in the area who were talking about notions of liberty and what ends up being in the Declaration of Independence, which was a part of a series of declarations, the Sheffield Declaration, all these declarations that emphasize liberty and independence. And, what's exciting about this, enslaved woman who, is in one of the households of a prominent person in Sheffield is the fact that she used that awareness of what was happening in the broader world in order to actually convince someone else to sue for her freedom. Her status as an enslaved person proved what, obviously African Americans and others always knew, which was that, the ideas of this country didn't just apply to certain people, applied to everybody. And that's what I think is so important about her sort of role in this.
Do you think that, in general, the solitary nature of slavery in the North led to her success with her case? It's not as if slavery didn't exist everywhere in the colonies, but you don't get plantations in the North the way that you do in the South, and that leads to a little bit more of an opportunity for her to engage in the way that you meant.
So there's a couple ways to think about access to freedom, right? So we think about the courts as a primary means. During the Revolutionary War, actually one of the primary means, which just makes sense when one thinks about Lord Dunmore's proclamation and the awareness that enslaved people in places like Virginia, for example, although I have to say that because enslaved people were so central to households in Virginia, they also very much heard some of those things. But what we do know is that many African Americans found their freedom actually fleeing to the British. And so Lord Dunmore, who is a British governor, is going to essentially say, if people, enslaved people cross over to the other side, that they would earn their freedom. And so it is true that up here there were less enslaved people, but in terms of ideas of liberty and when you think about these petitions that were sent in, we found traces of these petitions representing Black voices, all sort of throughout the Atlantic Rim and all the way down to South Carolina even. So,
and the irony being that, you've got these, what we call founding fathers, the Revolutionary War heroes saying we're fighting for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but not for the Black folks.
Probably not for the indigenous people.
Yeah, definitely not. But if we go and fight with the British, who the other colonists are fighting against so they can earn their freedom, we actually will get our freedom. It's this very interesting irony.
Yeah, and I think that there's so many ironies and contradictions that make up life, right? And I think that what we're trying to do, in places like Sheffield specifically, is trying to tell complicated histories in ways that don't try to avoid the hard elements of them, or when people made decisions historically that seem to contradict or go against maybe what they say and what they do. And Patrick Henry has a famous letter that he sends where he talks about the irony of his sort of being the most famous give me liberty or give me death, and sort of that founding generation proclaiming those sort of values, but also at the same time enslaving people. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I don't know if a lot of people are aware of, but Patrick Henry, yes indeed, was an enslaver, and so therefore, part of what my point is with saying this to everybody, everyone listening, is that the goal for us as students of history, but also just sort of those who are thinking people in the world, is to not try to collapse and make simple people's decision or choice, and actually just take the time to try to understand it. And that's what I enjoy most, and that's what this event that's happening tomorrow, Saturday, sort of thinking beyond Elizabeth Freeman, thinking about populations of people who are enslaved and free, and to try to tell this other version of the history of the Berkshires. There really just hasn't really been discussed as much outside of a small group of dedicated and excellent local historians. Shout out to all of them. But there's many. They have been doing this hard work of educating the community of Western Mass, of Sheffield, other places for a long time. And now what we're seeing is movement around Northampton, other places, around bringing it to the community. So it's not just something that historians or just history buffs know about. It's a part of the DNA of every community.
In Elizabeth Mumbet Freeman,
I do it all the time too.
Freeman
won her freedom, so it's easy.
It's Freeman.
Yeah.
Freeman is her last name. In her case, is there anything unique about the position that is taken for her freedom that resonates or gets used as example for other people who then stood for their freedom?
So Quock Walker and Elizabeth Freeman are on the suit. There have been other suits. So what's significant and important about it is that it compelled state officials, elected officials, to really think about, and it forced them to really think about what exactly their sort of principles were in terms of their constitution and everything. And so in that sense, it is important. Is it unique specifically in terms of the case? I don't believe, the legal historians can sort of break down the complexities and differences with these different suits. But really it's just an early example and a part of a broader movement, but a broader movement that actually will have real consequences, even if technically, and people will say this oftentimes, and one of the things that I try not to do as a professor is correct people, but they will
actually,
unless we're in class. In class I will, but like slavery, it didn't abolish slavery. Right. It didn't officially, formally abolish slavery. The suit, what it did was, because of the statement of the court that slavery is incompatible, it essentially meant that ultimately any enslaved person could sue for their freedom and will probably win, and then that sets a precedent which essentially led to the end of enslavement, despite the reality that enslavers in the South walked the streets of Northampton with their enslaved people all the way up to the 1850s.
But technically those people were not enslaved in Massachusetts,
Exactly.
so they can kind of get away with it on a little bit of a technicality.
Yeah, and also, It doesn't mean that there aren't, and I had a grad student a while ago who was working on looking at enslaved people who are still enslaved after this case and so more work to be done on that. But what's significant is that it's a moment when our state of Massachusetts was compelled to really think critically about the role of enslavement and how that's going to play itself out, and ultimately, by and large, slavery ends in Massachusetts after the case. So that is significant.
Lest they clog up the courts with a bunch of slaves going like, hey, I also want to be free.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the point being too that and we've even seen in our lifetime, one landmark court case opens doors for all sorts of other different people, be it in equal marriage, which again is under threat, in the marijuana laws in this state and in other states, and then the expunging of cases of people that had been imprisoned or charged with crimes for that. So the courts are an important piece of the way that our country has historically run, and I think they will continue to be an important piece. Which direction they will take us is the question.
More coming up as we look at history with Clark University professor Ousmane Power-Greene and explore efforts of communities to expose our country's less flattering histories versus national movements to obscure them.
After which, we'll talk about the Pay It Forward grant program with CitySpace Easthampton's Zoë Fieldman and grant recipient Chestina Thrower.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
We're speaking with Professor Ousmane Power-Greene here at the David Ruggles Center in Florence. The Power of History, our regular feature on this show. We're talking about Elizabeth Mumbet Freeman and a day that will celebrate her tomorrow in Sheffield.
It starts at 10 and there's talks and there's tours and there's more exploring her life and the area and the connection that it had to slavery in the Berkshires and her place in kind of breaking that a little open as Sheffield sort of became an example of how abolition and how equity started to work in the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
And, what she seems to be most well known for is that she sued for her own freedom,
that's right.
which ultimately led to the Constitution of Massachusetts being changed so that slavery was abolished.
Yeah, and I tomorrow there's a series of speakers who are going to attempt to educate people who come to the event. But it's a multi-layered event, and because I'm joining together with a bunch of the local historians to document Black lives in the Berkshires and specifically Sheffield and surrounding areas. And so, again, in many ways, this project to really think about the importance of African American history in these local communities is something that people have been doing, but now we're trying to think about it as the Connecticut River Valley, and then also thinking about the Berkshires and being sure that this doesn't just sort of end with all the changes that are happening nationally, internationally also, but definitely nationally around the Smithsonian and a lot of funding cuts and these sorts of things. We want to make sure that we continue the momentum that was started in 2020 and 2021 and not let our foot off the gas and keep finding answers to questions that people have been searching for answers to for a very long time.
This event is taking place at one of the trustees' locations at Ashley House, which I think is really cool. But now we're seeing community historians and a community effort to preserve local institutions and local land coming together to present this history that is very real, that is very true. Do you think that community efforts like this are going to end up being pieces of resistance, considering like the way that slavery is being portrayed by a lot of Common Core texts, things that you see in other places, PragerU.
And the reframing of the Smithsonian that's going on right now.
Exactly. The possible and very real closures of some of those museums and what happens to the materials that used to be there. Do efforts like this to really know local history and how it affects American history as a whole become those points of resistance?
So there's the professor answer and then there's the short answer. The professor answer is that historians have changed dramatically since the 60s and 70s, and the inclusion of other voices in the American narrative has been central to the transformation. Now, the efforts to undo what the majority of historians actually agree on, right, in terms of cause of civil war, for example, the role of enslavement, these are some examples that, despite efforts by those who are not historians, the vast majority of historians and professors at universities and high school teachers are basically in consensus on many things. Does it mean it can't end? No, but at the same time, one would hope that the work that had been done for generations, that's my point, actually, I'm being long-winded like a professor must be. My point is that this has been generational work to recover history of voices that have been marginalized, and it's not something that I think will be able to be accomplished in 4 years or 8 years. I think it's going to have to be a major revolution in how we think about the world. And I don't know if y'all have read 1984, but my senior AP English literature student is, so I've been reintroduced to that text. So those who are listening who've read 1984, we know what's possible. So
maybe a good time to reread it.
Along with Brave New World. Read them in tandem. It's very important that you read them both together.
Yeah, we'll throw Animal Farm in there maybe too. All the ones that I was assigned to read in my public schools, in Massachusetts.
And then go see Brazil.
Until this all blows over, just stay away from me.
Brazil. It's only a state of mind.
And we're speaking with Professor Ousmane Power-Greene here at the David Ruggles Center in Florence. And we have mentioned PragerU, which our good buddy from Self-Evident Education, Mr. Michael Lawrence Riddell, who's upstairs working right here in the Ruggles Center right now. We were informally talking about PragerU, which is this kind of privately funded with big money effort to replace, in perhaps a conspiratorial way, or perhaps it's just the writing on the wall, kind of the public education that public television and public radio had been funding and providing before. I jokingly said we're going to replace Sesame Street with Supremacy Street.
Have a rotten day.
Puppets are not nearly as pretty.
And, we're talking about the Smithsonian as well, and now we've got a fitness guru, Jillian Michaels, weighing in saying,
you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does.
Using this old trope that slavery existed for thousands of years. You can't just blame white people for this. And this is the narrative that's being pushed out there again. you can blame white people for it in this country. If you're talking about the Smithsonian and the history of this country and slavery in this country, you can blame it. What's your take on this, the rising of this narrative coming back to the top in response to what's going on, re-looking at the histories of the Smithsonian Institute, our hallowed institutions? It's like my favorite thing about Washington, D.C.
The irony for me is it is removing that impulse towards American exceptionalism in the place where we were really exceptional at it. We were really good at slavery.
Yeah, we perfected it in this country, despite the fact that it has existed beyond race for thousands of years before that. We made it about race.
Yeah, and I think that what's important is for us to realize that the efforts to divide people, the efforts to tell stories that are not true but perpetuate a sort of idea about the country really never really went away. I think that what has been successful has been, over the last 20 years at least, has been the sort of broad way in which history has become integrated into a lot of public institutions and things around that were not always dependent on the federal government, right? That have benefited from the federal government and federal funding, but really have been community-driven initiatives. And the initiative out in Western Mass and Central Mass, and even in the sort of Worcester area where I teach, these efforts are community-driven. They aren't necessarily dependent on outside funding. Now, my fear radar is on so many other things and not celebrities and others attempting to weigh in on things that they really haven't thought much about in their entire lives until 5 minutes ago.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to try to end slavery?
This is the kind of stuff you think about all the time, Professor Ousmane Power-Greene. And Saturday, tomorrow, in Sheffield, there will once again be a celebration of Elizabeth Mumbet Freeman. And you're speaking at it, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, really briefly, I am excited by the opportunity to, partner with others who are interested in making the history of African Americans, free blacks, those who were enslaved, something that everyone knows about in Western Mass. And so Sheffield Historical has really been pioneering this effort along with the statue and with what's happening. Obviously, Great Barrington historians have also been central figures in this effort to really bring above ground and move it beyond just a small group of historians.
Well, Professor Ousmane Power-Greene, I got to go to where you teach right now to help move Enzo into his dorm at Clark University. Awesome. Do you need a ride?
No, but I'm looking forward to seeing any of my students who are in the 413 listening to this show on campus next week.
And what's that class they should sign up for one more time?
Freedom Dreams, African American Freedom Dreams in the 20th Century, History 293, or From Black Power to Black Lives Matter, taught right after that, Tuesday, Thursday.
I'm going to come and audit.
It sounds like an awesome class, and frankly, what happened to our community can happen anywhere. Might be good knowledge to have.
Exactly.
For the future.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
The power of history.
And that's why they don't want you to have it.
Open the streets and watch our beliefs, and when they carve my name inside the concrete, I pray it forever.
And I do believe insider knowledge-wise, Ousmane told us that you need Freedom Dreams to take the history of hip-hop class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a Clark student
listening
right now.
If you're a Clark student listening
right now.
Or
if
you're
like us wanting to audit these classes, that's the order that you should do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The celebrations for Elizabeth Freeman Day happen at Ashley House in Sheffield starting at 10 a.m. and featuring performances by Wanda Houston and hikes around the house itself. Find more information by searching for Elizabeth Freeman Day celebration on trustees.org because Ashley House is one of the trustees' properties.
That's right, and that's all happening tomorrow, August 23rd. Now we'll celebrate the arts right in our own community with the Pay It Forward grant program.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Eastworks, 500,000 square feet dedicated to artists, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits where community happens. Learn more at eastworks.com.
That is the music of Hazel Basil, which we will get to in just a little bit. former Live Music Friday participant. Welcome back to the fabulous 413. CitySpace in Easthampton has just announced the 2025 cohort for its Pay It Forward grants. The Pay It Forward program provides complimentary venue access to CitySpace's Blue Room, a performance and incubator space located in Old Town Hall in Easthampton.
The program offers Western Massachusetts performers of all kinds a venue to incubate, create, present, and perform. The short-term residencies include financial support and venue access for public performances and events. Further one-on-one coaching and peer-to-peer learning deepens their practice, and more that we'll get into as we talk about the folks that got the grants this year.
And with us to talk about that program and this year's recipients is venue and program manager at CitySpace in Easthampton, Zoë Fieldman. Thanks for coming back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
We haven't been to CitySpace since 413 Day, which CitySpace and you hosted, which was fantastic, a celebration of all things Western Mass.
Yeah, that was wicked fun.
That was really fun. And we had you on last year talking about the Pay It Forward program grant recipients.
I got to talk with some of the recipients from last year because this is such a cool program, and we gave an overview of it. But tell us a little bit more about the Pay It Forward grant and where the idea came from to have CitySpace act as an incubator for local artists.
Yeah, so this is our 4th year running the program. This is my 2nd year managing this program, and the initiative originally came from just the fact that we have this beautiful space, the Blue Room, in the Old Town Hall. And a lot of the time, especially during the week, there's time where no one is in there doing anything. And space is an excellent resource. Space is an expensive resource, and is often a reason that artists are not able to create their art because they don't have the space to do it in. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could take this space that we have and connect it with those people who don't have access to spaces like that normally, either due to financial constraint, ability, other reasons that might prevent them from entering spaces such as the Blue Room. And we wanted to take it a step further, though, not just here's a stage, go at it, but here's a stage, here are workshops, here's help putting on your show, here's financial assistance, tech support, collaborative marketing, box office support. Artists get 90% of their ticket sales from the events on top of a stipend. So it's really about redirecting many kinds of resource to these artists. And artists are coming from all over the region, so from Franklin, Hampshire, and Hampden counties. We like to say that Easthampton's kind of at the heart of Western Mass in that way.
It's true.
I would agree with that. So where, Zoe, does this money for the grants come from so that you can pay it forward? Who is paying to pay it forward?
Such a good question. So the Pay It Forward program is generously funded by the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts, Greenfield Savings Bank, Tandem Bagels, Applied Mortgage, Boston Rare Maps, Greenfield Cooperative Bank, and Northampton Cooperative Bank, as well as the Massachusetts Cultural Council and individual donors.
Pause. What's Boston Rare Maps?
Boston Rare Maps is a amazing organization that you can find out more about them online. They are a newer founder for us, and they have been doing a lot to prop up this program. It's been really exciting.
Boston is such a confusing city to drive in that they must be not Boston well done maps, because Boston is not well done when it comes to maps.
Look,
that's why we need Boston Rare Maps.
When you let the horses decide where the roads go, certain things end up being non-Euclidean later on in life when you stop using the horses.
I'm looking up Boston Rare Maps. That seems interesting. But anyway, that's a topic for another day.
They didn't get one of these grants. They helped the grants.
I love maps.
We're talking. That is neither here nor there.
If a cartography, though, is in my passion, perhaps I could become a Pay It Forward grant recipient in the future. And that's
as long as you do a map performance.
Oh, totally.
Yes.
And let's talk about this year's cohort. Besides the person who we'll talk to in depth a little bit later and maybe even get to hear a little bit from for Pay It Forward 2025, who are the grant recipients this year, Zoe?
Yeah, so this year we have accepted 8 projects into the program, which is a little bit less than last year so that we can really give folks the time and attention and resources that they deserve. We have, coming up first, like you just played, we have Hazel Basil. Hazel's going to be performing on this Sunday, August 24th, with their project Breathe. It'll be like a meditative, beautiful musical space to enter.
Kind of sound bathy.
Kind of sound bathy, introspective. You heard a sample of their beautiful guitar playing.
I would encourage you to look them up on Instagram too. They've been doing these like riffs projects, so they like release a cool contemplative riff like that very regularly, so you can get a feel for their sound.
So they're going to be kicking off the season. Chestina, who I have here with me, will then be following up the next weekend with their quartet performing jazz and R&B music. Later in the year, we're going to have Mercedes Loving Manley performing, having her directorial debut with an original play, The Night We Rode. Muriel Monique Johnson will be performing storytelling. She's a beautiful storyteller. We will also have Patrick Madden is going to be performing as Judy Dentures, a drag clown grandma from your dreams and your nightmares. An acting class with Judy Dentures will be in November. Mo Schweiger will be presenting The Feast, which will be a devised performance, so there will be a call out for that later in the year. There's also currently an audition call for Mercedes' play going on right now, and there will be auditions in a few weeks for that. I need to make sure I'm counting correctly. We have Ricky Heatmiser, who is a Springfield-based rap artist, going to be performing with his trio Ellis Camp and some other acts that are to be announced. And I gotta make sure I got them all. We got Hazel, Ricky, Muriel, Mercedes, Chestina, Patrick, and Mo. That's everyone.
Cool.
We're speaking about the Pay It Forward grant program out of CitySpace in Easthampton, which provides grants for artists to explore their creative, as you could hear from the different recipients this year, all sorts of different manner of the arts. And we're talking with the events and program manager, the venue program manager, Zoë Fieldman.
What made you reduce the amount of grants that you gave out this year? Last year, I know you had 10 recipients, which is a lot.
Yeah. So this year, I think part of the idea was allowing more spaciousness in the schedule for both Pay It Forward programming and also our own other programming. So in CitySpace, you can rent the space, we book our own shows, and we have the Pay It Forward program. And the fall was a chaotic, amazingly chaotic, but chaotic season last year. And this way we can also allow for a little bit more spaciousness in organizing and scheduling all of these shows. I also want to say I did forget one artist. We also have Ailey is going to be performing a jazz and improvised music performance with some private workshops leading up to that. So apologies. Ailey will also be on the roster. November especially is going to be a really packed month for us Pay It Forward wise, so keep an eye out. And we also really want to encourage folks to see this as a season, I would say. So this way we have folks who are performing more than one show. Hazel has another show coming up November that's going to be a little bit bigger. It's also not a linear project, so you can have multiple shows like Hazel's doing. You can also perform, in August and then come back and continue to rehearse for other projects in the next coming months. So it's the idea is that it's not just about your performance, it's about cultivating your art and your creativity generally. So you can work on other projects that you're maybe not performing through the program, as long as you're able to continue to create and cultivate the art that you want to.
So it has a little bit of a residency feeling, even though they may not be in the Blue Room or in CitySpace for the entirety of the time of this. They have access to it multiple times if that's part of their creative muse.
Yes, exactly. And really encouraging folks, audience members, to see this as a series as well, which is a new initiative we're trying to push towards this year with these punch cards that we're selling. So you can buy either a 4 or 8 ticket punch card in advance. The 8 ticket punch card will only be available through September 1st. And they average to $15 a ticket. And ticket proceeds will still go to the artists whose shows you show up to. But that way you can buy up to 4 or 8 tickets at a time to the Pay It Forward series, show up to a show, and just get your card punched for those shows so that people keep coming back. And you might know one of the Pay It Forward artists, but this way you can come and see all of them or some of them and really support as a community member this initiative broadly and not just specific projects.
That's super fun.
And it's an interesting model that has popped up that I don't hear about from many other places besides the 413, but the Pioneer Valley Jazz Shares has now been doing it for years.
Secret Planet does it.
Adopted it a couple years ago, and this is an interesting, it's like the farm share model, which also has, at least on this continent, a lot of history in our area in Western Massachusetts, popping up to say, hey, in advance of the agricultural season, we want to pay it forward. We want to pay in advance to support the farmer through what may or may not be a good season weather-wise, to show that that's something you care about. In the same way, we're doing that with the arts, with Jazz Shares, with Secret Planet, and with the Pay It Forward campaign.
Exactly.
That being said, we talked a little bit about who's funding the Pay It Forward grants. Zoë Fieldman, who is a program manager at CitySpace in Easthampton. Have the federal cuts to the arts had a direct impact on the work that you're trying to do at CitySpace and or with the Pay It Forward program?
Yeah, so luckily we have been able to maintain pretty separate funding sources from everything that's happening on the federal level. So we've been able to maintain consistent funding for this program, other programming, also our fundraising and capital projects as well, which we've been, really lucky and has been really excellent. There are certainly other initiatives that we have been a part of in the past that are receiving cuts, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds for sure. But the Pay It Forward program this year is not going anywhere. Future years, hopefully, is not going anywhere, especially thanks to those donors and funders and private individual donors that, I wasn't able to name. But there's ways that you can continue to prop up this program and other programming at CitySpace and other local organizations like us.
How many people applied to the Pay It Forward grant program?
So this year we had about, I want to say it was 60 applications. We also had a new eligibility requirement this year. So we had a income cutoff for applications. Income has always been one of the top things that we look at in applicants in eligibility. But this year, opposed to other years, it would actually not let you apply if you made over $65,000. And the majority of our applicants are making well below that as well, but there's a real range of income levels under the $65,000 in terms of who could apply. But that way, because we were already kind of not looking at those applications because of how income is such a huge eligibility factor for this program, it's really about resource sharing and how income level is a barrier of access to resources like this. So it makes sense that if you make above a certain threshold, you wouldn't really be considered for this program. So we had about 60 applicants apply, but also had that cutoff, which was new this year. So there was, that's not counting the folks who maybe started their application but didn't get to progress because of income.
Cool.
You mentioned, Zoe, that you are working on capital projects. And when we were there for 413 Day, we got a little tour of the upstairs facility at CitySpace, which is this huge, gorgeous ballroom that used to be the town hall, right, where they'd have Easthampton Town Hall meetings. Our friend and disability advocate, Chris Palamas, reached out to us just a couple of weeks ago saying, are you guys talking about what's going on at CitySpace with the movement to get an elevator in there? Can you give us an update of what's going on to make the upper floor this huge, which would be a huge, huge, huge venue in the valley? How's the process going with getting an elevator for that?
Yeah, well, the process has officially begun. So ground has been broke. If you drive past the old town hall in CitySpace, which is right at that roundabout when you first enter Easthampton, you'll see a huge metal ramp up the front. So we put in a temporary wheelchair ramp up the front of the building because the elevator and entryway is going where the previous wheelchair ramp was. So you'll see a huge metal ramp up the front, and you'll see active construction happening Monday to Friday. And it's really exciting. So we are every day one active step closer to having the second floor be accessible to all. And then once that step is done, then we can begin the renovations and construction on the second floor. So it's happening. The ball is rolling.
And has that been raised from the community, or where did the money come from to make the upper floor accessible at CitySpace?
Yeah, so that's we have gotten a lot of contributions from the CPA, from Easthampton, the city of Easthampton.
Community Preservation Act.
Community Preservation Act, yes, thank you. A lot of money money from the city of Easthampton itself. We've had federal funding and individual donors as well. So we have a sponsor chair initiative where you can pay to get a chair sponsored eventually on the second floor when we have chairs put in there. So if you're interested in being an individual donor, there's ways to do that. We're also always looking for fundraising help. If you go to our website, cityspaceeasthampton.org, you can find out even more information about how to stay up to date on the renovations happening. We have an active blog now, as well as find out more ways that you can be a part of fundraising for the second floor.
That is Zoë Fieldman, who is the venue and program manager at CitySpace in Easthampton, and we're talking about the Pay It Forward Cohort 2025. Let's meet one of the cohort coming up in just a little minute here, Chestina Thrower.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar in Hatfield, dedicated to custom solar installations, electric vehicle charging solutions, and reliable long-term system support. northeast-solar.com.
Hey, who's that singing the blues in Springfield?
They're in the studio with us.
They are in the studio with us right now, and welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We're talking about the Pay It Forward grant program through CitySpace in Easthampton, and with us is Zoë Fieldman from CitySpace, as well as one of this year's cohort, Chestina Thrower.
Chestina Thrower is a vibrant and soulful jazz vocalist born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and raised in Springfield, Massachusetts, with a voice that holds so much warmth and soul. Thrower is making a name for themselves in the jazz scene here.
They have had the privilege of working with and learning from saxophonist Charles Neville and jazz legends Charles Tolliver and Sheila Jordan. They've had the opportunity to sing at a large array of events, from the Mass Mutual Center to the Borough of Manhattan Community College, Bishop's Lounge in Northampton, Holyoke Community. I almost said may she rest in peace, because I believe that is closed now, right? Yeah, I think so. Holyoke Community College's Dr. George Timmons inauguration in 2024, as well as opening for the Jazz in July All-Stars concert at UMass Amherst.
Thank for joining us.
Thank you.
So my first question is, how did you find out about this grant program to apply?
Well, a couple years ago, one of my teachers reached out and was like, hey, I really think this would be a good opportunity for you to show them your thing. And I was like, yeah. And I kind of just I held off for a while, and other people kept coming to me, and I was like, okay, I'll do it.
So you applied.
Yeah.
You were one of the 60 or something, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
And what was your pitch? What is it that you want to use this money to create and to do?
I wanted to create another space for jazz artists. I mean, or another opportunity, because I know, Bishop's, they're gone, of course. And there aren't a lot of jazz venues. I know Dewey's just closed.
Yeah.
And
in Springfield, yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy. I feel like the only place to really go is Hartford or down to Connecticut. So this is a really good opportunity. Yeah.
What was it like assembling your quartet to play with you?
I mean, I've been playing with them for a while now, maybe 3 years at this point. Mm-hmm. It's been wonderful. They're amazing. They're open-minded. They're lovely. Yes.
You were born in Pittsburgh, right? But you grew up in Springfield, and I was reading up on you a little bit. Your dad was really influential in your love of music. Can you talk about that story?
Yeah. So my father has always been a lover of music, and for a while he was trying to find different art forms for me to try out. So, I did dancing, and I played violin when I first came here, and saxophone, but one of my core memories is watching PBS with him and watching all these specials on
you're talking our language there.
Yeah, Ella, Sarah, and then seeing even Motown and doo-wop programs. So I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to do that. and eventually I joined the jazz band at my high school, and I did jazz camps at CMSS.
What's CMSS?
Community Music School of Springfield.
Hey.
Yeah, they're my place. They're my second home. Yeah. So he really started me and nurtured.
We were lucky enough to get to know Charles Neville a little bit before he passed away. He's a legend, the first family of funk, as far as I'm concerned, from New Orleans, but also made it his home in the hill towns here in western Massachusetts. His wife is still a big part of putting on Springfield Jazz and Roots Festival that happens every year. Talk about your relationship with Charles Neville and how that came about.
Well, the Community Music School of Springfield brought him in to teach the jazz camp that they had at the time. And he taught us When the Saints Go Marching In and all the, classic like New Orleans feels.
Totally.
It was just a good time. I don't know. It's wonderful that I got to meet such a legend, even if it was just for a short time. Like him.
And now you're studying music at UMass. Like, how different is it studying the thing that you've been doing for so long? Because sometimes there's a little disconnect there.
Yeah.
Well, I went to HCC for a while, and I studied there, and I'm just going into UMass. I already had a tie to them through Jazz in July. I am an RA there, like over the summer, and I get to play with some amazing individuals and play with the Con Alma trio. So I feel like there is no disconnect. It all transfers over.
But it's going to be an interesting thing, you doing those studies and then having this residency going in and out. Are you planning on doing more than one performance, or is next Saturday everybody's only opportunity to see you at CitySpace?
It is the only opportunity.
All right.
Yeah, these guys are coming from far and wide. We got a couple people coming from New York and one from New Haven, so this is your only chance.
and it is Live Music Friday, so that we don't have your whole quartet here, but we do have you here. And at least I danced around in the green room the idea of maybe you wanting to perform something a cappella.
Yeah.
Do you want to perform something a cappella, Chestina Thrower?
I'll do a little something.
All right.
Go for it.
Yeah. Summertime, and the living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich, and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. Do 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 ba ba do 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 dum de ba ba do 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 do.
Chestina Thrower, one of the Pay It Forward grant recipient cohort of 2025 CitySpace in Easthampton. Should we radically change gears right now and do the weird thing that I said we should do before? Or do you have another question you want to ask?
I do have another question.
Okay, go ahead. We'll see if we have time for the very weird thing that I have in store, maybe.
There are a lot of vocal approaches that you can take in jazz, and you, scat, which we just heard and was awesome. Like, what appealed about doing that sort of improv as opposed to some of the other methods that you could take?
I feel like since I started out like going into jazz more as a saxophonist, scatting was kind of my way of taking that like more, I guess, instrumental approach. I'd love it. I love being able to do anything. Like it's so cool. I can use any syllables I want, and yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
That is cool. And you will be performing at CitySpace in the Blue Room in Easthampton a week from tomorrow, August 30th, as the second of the cohort of 2025, because Hazel Basil's going first, right? And when is that again, Zoe?
That is this Sunday, the 24th at 7 p.m. You can buy tickets online now at cityspaceeasthampton.org or at the door.
Great.
Awesome.
Now, you are representing Easthampton here, and the town next door to Easthampton is Northampton, where there is a mayoral preliminary that is happening in September. We, at the Fabulous 413, have invited all 4 mayoral candidates onto the show. But to do this as fairly as possible...
Not at the same time.
We're not going to do it at the same time, and we are going to have Easthampton people randomly select the order in which we will talk to the Northampton mayoral candidates. So, I've written down their names on these pieces of paper. I'm putting their names in the hat.
In Monty's actual hat.
My
He's
actual
taken
hat.
it off of his head.
And Zoe and
put
Chestina
slips of paper inside.
are going to pick the order in which we will interview the Northampton mayoral candidates.
This is amazing.
Chestina, why don't you draw first?
No pressures.
This is not an endorsement.
Not
No,
an endorsement.
none of
It
these
is
are
literally
endorsements?
just a random order. Yeah, read it out loud.
Gina Louise
Shara.
Shara.
Current mayor of Northampton goes first. Wow, that is not what I was hoping for or expecting, but that is the way that it is.
Okay.
Second.
Giving this a good mix. Second, we have David Dombrowski.
All right.
Okay.
Number 2. Third in the Northampton mayoral lottery for the Fabulous 413 will be
Dan Brandel.
Okay.
There we go, Dan Brandel.
And that leaves Jillian Duclos for the 4th and final.
Too close to call.
Oh.
So those are the
Oh my
mayoral
God.
candidates for the preliminary, which will happen in September in Northampton. They're not going to, 2 will go through the preliminary to the general election in November. We've invited them all on the show. We'll do one-on-one interviews with them at a place of their choosing in Northampton. And thanks to CitySpace in Easthampton for picking the order in which we will have them.
And for hosting us once again for 413 Day and engendering local artists in this way, talking about the Pay It Forward grant, along with recipient Chestina Thrower, who you can catch live for one night only in their Blue Room on August 30th. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks to you, Zoe, as well. And we got a lot of exciting stuff next week on the Fabulous 413. We're going to go on a farm tour with Congressman McGovern. We're going to go to Community Music School in Northampton to visit an instrument petting zoo, and so much more.
And so much more. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'm Khalees Smith.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
Talk to you on Monday.